On a quiet Thursday night, everything appeared as usual. After a long day at work, I was anticipating a peaceful evening at home. Downstairs, my wife Susan was engrossed in one of her favorite TV shows, while our daughter Emily, like most 16-year-olds, was chatting on the phone in her room. As I walked past her door to bid her goodnight, a snippet of her conversation caught my attention. "Yeah, my mom was with him again last weekend," she said nonchalantly, making me pause outside her room. Curious but not intending to eavesdrop, I listened further. "Yeah, she's been seeing him for a while now. I mean, she doesn't even try to hide it anymore," Emily continued with a hint of laughter in her voice. A surge of discomfort washed over me as I came to realize the nature of their discussion. But Susan had a lover. Someone she had been seeing regularly, someone Emily knew about. My heart pounded as I tried to process the words. Could it be true? Had my wife, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, been leading a double life right under my nose? A coldness settled in my chest as I continued listening, hoping for some sign that I had misunderstood, that this was some sort of mix-up. Instead, I heard Emily giving her friend more details I wished I could erase from my mind. "She tells me to cover for her sometimes, like if you know who calls," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Dad would never believe it. He has no clue. Mom's actually gotten pretty good at sneaking around." A bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it, and I quickly covered my mouth, terrified that Emily would hear me and realize I was there. I stepped back slowly, my mind spinning with disbelief. Emily knew, my own daughter knew about her mother's affair, and had been helping to hide it from me. Betrayal stung even deeper as I played back Emily's words in my mind. Walking downstairs, my body felt numb as I settled on the couch, struggling to gather my thoughts. Glancing at Susan, engrossed in her show, her face illuminated by the TV's glow, she appeared composed and ordinary. How long had she deceived me? How many nights had she left me in the dark to be with another man? And how often had Emily shielded her, fabricating stories to hide her mother's secret? I could hardly bring myself to look at Susan, but I forced myself to remain composed. Confronting her now, without solid evidence, would only give her an opportunity to deny it and twist the situation to make me doubt my own sanity. I needed clarity to steady my thoughts and plan my next steps. For the remainder of the evening, I mechanically went through the motions, barely able to utter a word. Susan seemed oblivious, absorbed in her show, chuckling at the scenes unfolding on the screen, while I sat there, lost in my own turmoil, feeling my life unravel before my eyes. That night I lay in bed beside her, unable to sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying Emily's words over and over in my mind. Memories that I once cherished flooded back to me as I thought about the day Susan and I got married, the years we had spent building a life together, and the precious moments we had shared. However, it all felt like a facade now, shattered by the betrayal that had unfolded before me. Not only had Susan deceived me, but she had also involved our daughter, Emily, in her deceit. Despite the seething anger within me, I knew I needed to stay composed. Confrontation would not solve anything at that moment. I needed to carefully assess the situation and understand the full extent of their betrayal before deciding on my next steps. As I lay there in the stillness of the night, listening to Susan's rhythmic breathing, I couldn't shake the feeling of being a stranger in my own life. The following day, I tried to maintain my usual routine. All while grappling with the turmoil that now consumed my thoughts, I forced myself to smile, pretending I didn't know that my wife and daughter had been lying to me. But every time I looked at Susan or caught a glimpse of Emily, I felt a bitterness gnawing at me, reminding me of the truth I could no longer ignore. I was determined to get to the bottom of it, to find out just how long this had been going on and who this other man was. Susan believed she could fool me, thinking I'd never suspect a thing. But she was mistaken. I wouldn't confront her just yet, but I would uncover the truth. And when I did, I'd make sure she understood the pain she had caused. As I headed off to work that morning, a strange icy resolve settled over me. Susan and Emily had chosen their sides, and now I would choose mine. Whatever came next, I'd ensure they felt the full weight of their betrayal. The following days were a blur of confusion, anger, and heartbreak. My mind raced constantly, cycling through the various emotions, reflecting on memories, scrutinizing every detail of each moment. Every glance, every touch, brought me back to the times when Susan would dress up for her girls' night out, claiming she needed a break. I had always taken her word for it, placing full trust in her. However, now every memory was distorted, reshaped by the sudden realization that her love and faithfulness had all been a facade. Despite the overwhelming pain, I knew I had to remain composed. Confronting her immediately would only provide her the opportunity to fabricate lies and come up with excuses. She would hold all the power as I struggled with unanswered questions. Therefore, I had to approach this situation strategically. I needed to validate every doubt before considering my next steps. That night, I waited until Susan had drifted off to sleep, her breathing steady, before quietly slipping out of bed and making my way to her office. I meticulously searched through her drawers and documents, hoping to uncover any evidence that would shed light on her deception. In her purse, I stumbled upon a receipt from an upscale restaurant across town, dated on a night she claimed to be with a friend. It was an extravagant establishment, the type that, the spot we frequent for special occasions, was where I began my search for answers. The receipt I found was just a piece of the puzzle, but it provided a starting point. With a heavy heart, I resorted to unlocking her phone using the password I had observed her enter countless times. It was a breach of privacy, and I struggled with the morality of my actions, but my determination to uncover the truth outweighed my guilt. Scrolling through her messages, my worst suspicions were confirmed. Conversations with a man named D revealed a disturbing level of intimacy through phrases like "Last night was amazing, miss you," and "When can we meet again?" Each message felt like a dagger, metaphorically piercing deeper into my heart. Not only had she deceived me, but she had also maintained a secret world outside our marriage, with the involvement of our own daughter. An overwhelming mixture of anger and sadness consumed me. Despite the urge to confront her immediately, I made a conscious decision to keep my emotions under control and let the anger simmer beneath the surface. She believed she was invincible, that her betrayal would go unchecked, but little did she know that her actions would not go unchallenged. Concealed from view, yet starkly evident in black and white, the painful reality of the life I thought I knew surfaced. The following morning, I sat at the breakfast table, observing her cheerful movements in the kitchen, unaware of the turmoil raging within me. Her laughter in response to Emily's words momentarily offered a semblance of normalcy. But I now saw through the facade, the forced smiles, the deceptive acts. Everything about her seemed artificial, veiling the betrayal lurking beneath. Emily cast a glance my way, her demeanor unreadable, slightly aloof perhaps. I could no longer regard her in the same light, not after discovering her complicity in keeping this secret alongside her mother. The betrayal stemmed not just from Susan, but from both of them. Emily had opted to conceal her mother's transgression, prioritizing the preservation of the falsehood over honesty with me. The anguish I felt was indescribable, as though I had lost not only a spouse but a daughter as well. That day at work, my concentration wavered. Beneath the surface simmered a seething anger, poised to erupt. I yearned to confide in someone, to seek solace in a friend. I experienced a sense of empowerment from achieving closure. Consequently, I created a meticulous letter detailing all the revelations I had made. I elucidated every instance of betrayal, deception, and unfulfilled commitment. This letter served as my ultimate gesture to her before making the decision to depart, liberating myself from the burdens of our history. With a mixture of sadness and relief in my heart, I deposited the letter into the mailbox, allowing it to set the groundwork for my fresh start. A sense of justice burned within me, as sharp as the pain of her betrayal. Instead of pleading for her to stay or engaging in a fight, I resolved to inflict the same emptiness in her life that she had caused in mine. That evening, with the sun setting, I made a firm decision. I would disappear abruptly, without a word or a trace, just like how she had stripped everything away from me. I wanted her to experience the void she had created. Let her awaken to an empty bed and a vacant home. let her bear the weight of her actions in solitude, with neither the husband she had deceived nor the family she had taken for granted by her side. My absence would serve as the final message, a stark reminder that broken trust could never be repaired. I surreptitiously began making arrangements, transferring funds discreetly, closing shared accounts, and securing a new place where she would never discover me. While she believed she had me in the dark, I was steps ahead, ensuring she would soon comprehend the consequences of her betrayal. The ensuing days tested my patience. I maintained a facade of normalcy, feigning the role of the same husband and father, although every fiber of my being knew the truth. Things had changed. I was living with strangers, people who had betrayed me in the deepest possible way. However, I stayed calm, knowing that soon they would wake up to the consequences of their actions. Every evening after they went to bed, I continued my preparations. I transferred enough money into a private account to sustain me for a few years, being careful to leave no trace of where I'd gone. I researched new cities, finally settling on a small town where no one knew my name. I would have a fresh start, a chance to rebuild far away from the memory of betrayal that haunted our home. The hardest part was deciding what to leave behind. I took a few personal items, things that had real meaning for me. Photographs, mementos from my own family, things Susan would never miss. I wanted her to feel the emptiness when she woke up, to understand what it was like to lose something she thought would always be there. I wanted my disappearance to be a reminder of what she'd thrown away. As I finalized my plans, a sense of calm settled over me. Eyes heavy with tears looked down. This wasn't just an escape. It was my way of reclaiming control. I had been the one blindsided, but now I held the cards. Soon they would know what it felt like to be left in the dark. On my last night, I took one final look around the house. I walked through each room, memories flooding back with every step. I could hear Susan's laughter, see Emily's childhood drawings still hanging on the walls. It was painful but necessary. I had loved them both deeply, but that love had been shattered. Now all I felt was a hollow emptiness. At dawn, I took my bag and walked out the door. The air was crisp, the world still asleep. As I climbed into my car, I looked back one last time, feeling a strange sense of finality. This chapter of my life was over. And as I drove away, I knew I was leaving behind not just a home, but also the betrayal, the lies, and a life I thought I knew. I didn't know what the future held, but I felt something I hadn't in months: freedom. The first few days in my new town were surreal. I'm glad to have started afresh. I found a small, quiet place on the coast far enough that I knew they'd never find me. I rented a modest apartment overlooking the ocean and started settling into my new life. It was strange living alone, but the solitude brought a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. I spent my days exploring the town, meeting new people, and keeping a low profile. No one here knew my story, and that was exactly what I wanted. I could finally be myself without the weight of the betrayal hanging over me. I wasn't anyone's husband or father anymore. I was just a man free to start fresh. Every so often, my thoughts would drift back to Susan and Emily. I pictured them waking up to find me gone, realizing that their secrets had cost them everything. I imagined the confusion, the shock, the gradual understanding of what my disappearance meant. They'd lost the life they had taken for granted, and that thought brought a sense of satisfaction. I kept my phone off, cutting off all contact with the past. It was a clean break, a new beginning. The life I had left behind was slowly fading into the distance, bringing me a newfound sense of tranquility with each passing day. It had been 3 years since I disappeared from my previous existence. And during that time, I had forged a completely fresh path. My days now consisted of simple yet gratifying activities, such as exploring the charming coastal town I now called home, making connections with people who were strangers to my past, and reveling in a liberation that had eluded me before. Though the wounds of betrayal still lingered, they had softened over time, allowing me to truly begin to heal and move forward. One clear afternoon, as I relaxed in a local cafe, relishing the peaceful surroundings, a familiar voice abruptly pulled me from my reverie. I glanced up to behold Dan, an old friend from my former life, standing before me with astonishment written across his face. The shock of seeing each other after so long was mutual. "Is it
Dan
really
inquired,
you?" His eyes widened in disbelief. "Yes, Dan, it's truly me," I replied, a rush of memories flooding my mind. The unexpected reunion with someone from my past, especially an old friend like Dan, caught me off guard. As he settled into the seat opposite me, a mix of curiosity and concern etched on his face, he began, "Everyone thought you just disappeared. No one had any idea where you went. I needed a fresh start," I replied carefully, unsure how much to reveal, but something in Dan's expression told me he had more to say. "Man, you missed a lot," he said, leaning forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "After you left, well, things went downhill fast for Susan and Emily." My heart pounded as I listened, the emotions I'd buried starting to surface. I nodded, waiting for him to continue, trying to keep my expression neutral. "Right after you disappeared, rumors about Susan's affair started going around," he continued, shaking his head. "At first, people were sympathetic, thinking she'd been blindsided by your departure. But then the truth started leaking out, and everything changed." I raised an eyebrow, my interest piqued. "What do you mean?" Dan sighed, glancing around the cafe before continuing. "Well, it turns out Susan wasn't as discreet as she thought. People began piecing things together, the fancy dinners, her outings, and the fact that he never appeared to be concerned about your whereabouts. Rumors began circulating, ultimately revealing that she had been engaged in an affair for some time. Hearing this filled me with a dark sense of satisfaction. While it was one thing for me to be aware of the truth, learning that she had been exposed and her reputation tarnished evoked a different feeling entirely. Dan continued speaking, his tone growing somber. "People in her life turned against her. She lost numerous friends, longtime acquaintances who now wanted nothing to do with her. Even her own family felt ashamed. I heard her parents were devastated upon discovering her actions. Concerned, I asked about Emily. Dan's response was disheartening. Emily and Susan had a significant falling out. Emily held her mother responsible for everything. The fractured family, your absence. She also felt remorse for keeping the truth hidden from you. It was mentioned that Emily relocated after graduating, severing all ties with her mother. They no longer communicate." As I took in this information, I leaned back, processing the unraveling situation. Susan had severed ties with everyone, including her own daughter, as she faced the consequences she had been avoiding. Reflecting quietly, I realized that the outcome was not as I had expected. Despite feeling a profound sense of closure and justice rather than sadness, Dan acknowledged that sometimes moving on is the best decision. As we shared a moment of contemplative silence, I expressed gratitude to him for providing the closure I needed. Walking away from our conversation, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. I found peace in the truth revealed and the justice served. Strolling along the beach at sunset, I recognized that the chapter of the past, including Susan and Emily's choices, had reached its conclusion, and I had made my choice. For the first time, I experienced a profound sense of freedom. The downfall of Susan and Emily marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life. It was a peculiar sensation to realize that those who had once held so much importance to me were now mere memories from afar. Their influence over me had finally been broken, and the anger, betrayal, and heartache were slowly dissipating, making way for a newfound feeling of liberation that I never thought possible. In the subsequent weeks, I fully immersed myself in the life I had constructed in this serene coastal town. After years of isolation and guardedness, I now felt prepared to embrace the world in a way I had never done before. I rekindled my connection to old hobbies, such as photography and hiking, spending hours wandering the nearby trails and capturing the beauty of nature. Joining a local community group, I began volunteering and interacting with individuals who were unaware of the hardships I had endured. To them, I was simply the person I had evolved into, not the pain that lingered in my past. Sitting at the local diner one evening, surrounded by a group of new friends, I had a moment of realization about my growth. No longer feeling defined by my past struggles, I had built a better, more authentic life for myself. As I pondered the idea of opening myself up to companionship once more, I thought of a woman named Claire that I had met through a community project. She exuded kindness, humor, and compassion, which felt like a breath of fresh air to me. Our conversations were effortless, filled with laughter and mutual understanding. Despite knowing nothing of my past heartbreak, I felt compelled to share my story with her for the first time, allowing myself to be vulnerable again. During a quiet dinner, I opened up about my past struggles, the betrayals, the pain, and the journey that had brought me to this moment. Claire listened without judgment, offering me her unwavering support through her calm and grounding presence. As I poured out my heart, she reached out and gently placed her hand over mine, a silent gesture of solidarity. It was a moment of profound connection and understanding with Claire. I have discovered a new form of companionship based on genuine respect and shared moments, devoid of the betrayal that burdened my past. There was no rush, no pressure, only the freedom to appreciate each other's company and let things unfold naturally. For the first time in years, I sensed a warmth blossoming in my heart, sparking hope for what the future may bring. Reflecting on my journey from heartbreak to healing, as I sat on the beach watching the sunset, I understood that I had completed a full circle. The pain that once seemed insurmountable had actually forged me into a stronger, wiser individual. The shadows of Susan and Emily from the past had faded, their hurtful actions now a closed chapter in a book I had moved on from. My current life was mine alone, unmarred by deception, liberated from the bitterness that once consumed me. Observing the unceasing rhythm of the waves, I felt a deep sense of peace, finally finding true happiness after surviving betrayal. Through rebuilding myself, I emerged stronger, and with a life that surpassed my wildest dreams. I was now free from the past, defined by my own inner strength rather than the pain inflicted by others. This new chapter was one of tranquility, joy, and new beginnings, and I eagerly anticipated what lay ahead. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If you enjoyed the narrative, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Your support means the world to us. Remember to subscribe to the channel for future videos. Stay tuned for something exciting releasing tomorrow, and hit the notification bell to be among the first to experience it. See you in the next video.